Hi, Ophelia. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Yes, I'm so sorry again about the mix-up yesterday. Yeah, that was
Okay.
complete
We've
mistake
moved
putting it
on.
today.
We're on a
Okay.
different day.
Don't
A
worry
different
about it for a
program.
minute. Don't worry about it for a minute.
Hakuna Matata.
For us, it's a great consolation that we're not the only ones that make mistakes
Yes.
Well,
and
yeah, it's
forget
great to
stuff
see
because
you
we
all.
forget stuff every day about 5 times if we're lucky.
Sometimes I can't even remember what I forgot.
So once everyone comes, I think we'll just tell you a few updates about the curriculum initiative, and then we will open it up to, then we'll ask you a few questions.
Okay, we want to hear from you. And so and then, you know, if we probably will have some questions at some point. Let me ask you before we start, or we get into it. We have set this up to, I mean, we advertise this going until 9 o'clock. Do you want to, is that too long for you? Do you want to have a planned end point so that we can sort of be aware of how much time we have, or what's the feeling? Who?
I'm able to go until 9.
Okay, well, we may run out of steam before 9 o'clock, but we will definitely not run later than 9. But if people want to, if anybody needs to get off earlier, that's okay too. This is being recorded, and I should have the recording available in about an hour after it's over. And so anybody who doesn't, you can always look at it again to remind yourself, or see things you missed. So we find that the recordings are very useful to have. So let's see, looks like we have still a couple of more students to come on, but we're looking pretty close. So do you want to wait? Do you want to start off right now? Or you want to wait just a little bit longer?
Well, I know one of our co-heads is going to be a little bit late because she has another meeting that's might run over, but so I feel like we're probably pretty good to get started.
Go ahead.
Awesome. So over the past little while that since we last spoke, we've been starting to try to kind of we've been doing a few other kind of initiatives in restructuring the club to make us more efficient and to increase retention. But after that, we feel much more kind of refreshed and ready to really start going to work on this project. We've kind of created a plan and outlined our kind of more concrete ideas about what specifically we're looking for. Kind of, I think as a club, we decided that maybe pivoting away from a more specific, singular, separate climate curriculum being added, but instead weaving in climate units into all of the curriculum that is already mandatory and high level impact places. The first few places that we've decided kind of to start off with, the first 2 departments have been the English department, because that's the department where we most kind of easily hit the most amount of people, in the sense every single student accident needs to take English, and they all take the same English until senior year. And it's somewhere we can get started really quickly, really ingraining those values of climate justice from a young age. So that's kind of one of the first places we've identified. And then the other has been kind of in the more economic business kind of cluster of courses that kids who are interested in going to that field typically take, because we think that that's the place where people will be having the biggest impact on the environment, but are the least likely to necessarily have a passion for the environment or have an awareness around climate issues. So from there, we've kind of identified a few teachers who we're going to start reaching out to about who have either teach some of those classes that are really high impact or have already shown interest in environmentalism. For example, there's an English teacher who teaches an elective about literature and the land. So our plan is we're now moving into trying to assemble a team of teachers who are interested in climate curriculum and beginning drafting that curriculum for those 2 kind of main clusters as our starting places. to then go to the department heads with those proposals about changing the curriculum. Another kind of element of that is also really exciting is a collaboration we've been doing it with another school. Sophia, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and before that, just to add on to what Fee said, at Exeter, for the Exeter portion of the curriculum initiative, we'll, just to clarify, we'll assemble a team of teachers to help us write the curriculum, and we'll be meeting with them hopefully soon. We'll reach out to them and then hopefully meet with them. And that way we can get started and get the project moving. And the collaboration with a school in Germany, I can share with you the, well, so we're hoping to create an international standard curriculum for environmental education and climate education. Here is a link to our timeline that I sent in the chat. And
Okay, good.
we've gotten that project approved and we're moving forward with that. So the only thing is that since in Germany, the state makes the curriculum, we can't enact change in one individual school, in one individual school's curriculum. So what they have though is this kind of this period at the end of the year where they can pursue special interest classes, like they can take music lessons and classes that are outside of the core curriculum. And so we're hoping to work with the students that we've spoken to put that together. So kind of like a special interest class about climate change and education about climate change and climate action.
And just
Yeah.
a little background around that collaboration. So this is a school in Germany that is right by the area that was affected by the intense flooding. So after those floods, Sophia had the great idea about reaching out and seeing if there was any way we could help or collaborate. But we didn't have a real clear image of it. But after a meeting with you guys and thinking more about kind of the importance of climate conscious curriculum, we thought that could be a really cool collaboration where we're both able to help each other with roadblocks we find along the way, as well as just kind of being able to have another kind of separate mind to bounce ideas off of and motivate each other.
Mm-hmm. And we're hoping to expand to other countries as well after we get this one off the ground. Yes.
Great, bravo.
Yeah.
Are these changes in curriculum that you're talking about, are these things that are going to, will they take effect at Exeter later this year, or is this something for next year? What are your thoughts?
We're hoping, go ahead, Kvi.
Oh no, I think it depends on the department cycles. So I know math updates the curriculum every single summer. I know others, they might not update it until it comes up, in which case we might be able to do it sooner because that's much more initiative based. So I think that's one of the things we really need a team of teachers for, because they really know the inner workings of the school much better than we do, as well as knowing kind of what's going to actually work in a classroom, because that's what they've been trained to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Are you planning on doing these initiatives directly with the individual faculty members or through the coordination of the sustainability director?
Directly with the faculty members. So that's because as Fee said, we're pivoting away from the single mandatory course that's year long, and we're focusing more on kind of incorporating climate education into core classes that are already mandatory.
Good.
So yeah, so we are going to contact teachers directly, and then at some point later on, once we have a very comprehensive plan for the curriculum, I believe that we'll have to present in front of the faculty or something like that. So
Sounds fantastic. Sounds really well
That's
thought out.
quite a bit of headway. How many teachers have you had a contact with, and who, or maybe how many additional teachers have heard about you and your initiative? Is this something that is percolating through the school yet?
So funnily enough, actually, there's this class at Exeter that already exists called GUL, which is the Green Umbrella Learning Lab.
Mhm.
And what they do is they pick an environmental initiative, and you're allowed to take that time out of your schedule to focus on it. And one of our co-heads, who is hopefully going to be joining us soon, is part of that, and they're actually also had the idea of doing something climate-based. So we've been trying to collaborate through that. It's a bit difficult because all the people who take that class aren't necessarily part of the club. So there's been just some difficulty with time arrangements. But so they've already reached out to some teachers. So we didn't think it was necessarily the best idea to just continuously reinvent the wheel and continue to push those teachers. But right now we've identified, I want to say about 7, 8-ish teachers that we're planning on emailing. But once that list came up, it was just the week we came up with that list and kind of perfected it, and the week before our meeting. So we figured we'd hold off on contacting them to talk to you guys a bit more and just kind of flesh out our ideas a bit more thoroughly.
Sure.
So can I ask you if you have identified some teachers who are agreeable to changing their curriculum or including more climate issues in their curriculum, do these teachers have to discuss it with their department heads and the rest of their departments? And so they can't just go off on their own and say, well, we're going to include some climate related topics in our course. They can't do that, right? They have to. Okay, all right. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's actually sort of a way that we've identified these teachers as being people that would be helpful to work with, because there is a degree of agency that the teachers have in the curriculum making, but we want to make sure that a student doesn't just get a climate education based on whether or not they're lucky enough to have a certain teacher in, like, say, US history or biology. So we're kind of taking the initiative they already have and are going to try to go to the department to do a more department-wide thing with it.
Great.
Good thinking. Good thinking.
Yeah.
One question that I have is, you were talking about an international cooperation and then perhaps expanding the international outreach. Have you thought about any kind of national outreach or even local, let's call them boarding school outreach? If I'm making this up, but if you called the work that you're doing Cal for Climate Action Leadership, if you had a logo or website or concept of an organization called Cal Exeter, then there could be a Cal St. Paul's, Cal Andover, Cal, and then it could bump up to the college level. It could be Cal Harvard, Cal Yale, so that there would be kind of a growing concept around this one curriculum concept that would percolate around both the country and the world. Just
Yes.
Make it cool, and then everybody wants to do it.
Right. Well, yes. So we actually reached out to schools in California and Oregon when they were getting hit by high temperatures and fires. We didn't receive any responses, so we were trying to just focus all our energy on the one school that did respond, which was this school in Germany. But we did have an idea of this organization called, we called it the Youth Environmental Protection Organization, that was going to, we're hoping to make it basically what you described, a kind of a multi-branch international organization that works on initiatives in multiple countries. So yes.
That would be YEP.
Yepo.
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 Yes, Yepo, good. That
I can
sounds-
send you the original plan for that if you're interested. But yeah, that's our long-term goal. These are all the steps that we're taking to kind of like to do that.
Yeah, that we would be very interested, I would say. And that reminds me, when we last met, toward the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that you'd had a meeting with Principal Rawson, and at the end of, before we left that topic, you said that you had prepared some documents, or you had something that you were going to share with us, and then I think you never did. But if there is anything that would be useful to share about that you think we would be interested in, it's never too late. So if you remember what it was, I mean, I can't remember exactly what you were going to write up. You said you had to write up something anyway, and you would just share it. So if that rings a bell, if you can't remember, I think I sent you with the last thing, I'd sent the link to that talk. You can find it, and you can always look at it again. It was like in the first. Anyway, it's not terribly important if it's. But
wait, perhaps it is this, but this is what we put together for Principal Rawson, but it's more of a kind of general list. But yes.
Okay. Well, if you think this is it, we have it now. So it's another Google Doc.
It is.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
I don't remember having seen that, Conrad. Have we all seen it, or is that something we haven't just received? We just haven't received yet.
I haven't looked at. I don't think we got anything before, but
Okay.
I just know I did when I was watching it the other day. I kind of had forgotten about this, but you mentioned that you were putting something together and you would share it with us. And I wasn't aware that you ever did. So maybe this is it. So
When you
Well,
all met with Principal Rawson, did you have an agreement by the end of your meeting about what any next steps would be, about what your projects would be, and when you'd have a future conversation with him to keep things going?
Yeah, so that was right at the beginning of the year. So we were very much in a brainstorming phase. Us new co-heads were just coming in for the turnovers, so we didn't have a whole lot of really concrete ideas, but we were more kind of seeing what he would particularly be receptive to, how he could just genuinely help us more kind of wide level. We're not really sure if this sort of curriculum change would be going to him exactly, would be the most productive thing. But in the general vein of climate leadership, something going up to more kind of his higher level and going up to the trustees as well, we were trying to get a hold of, was the environmental kind of theme initiative. So that was originally Saphira's idea, so she can probably talk about it a bit better, but I don't know if you guys remember, but I think last year there was a 50 years of coeducation theme around campus.
right.
Yes.
So we were kind of hoping to do something similar with climate, and that was an idea that emerged out of the trustees. So that was kind of where we were planning on going with that.
Great
Sounds
idea.
This would be for next year. You think, have the theme be climate for next year? Great.
Yeah. And we need to start planning this year, because it took a lot of organization. Like it was a whole year of this where they brought speakers, and there were a lot of emails sent out. So that's what we're hoping to do with the with environmentalism, like a theme of environmentalism. So yes, so I guess that's a good segue into our question for you, which is if you have any contacts that maybe would be helpful for when we reach out to the trustees. I think you said that you spoke to them at some point, and also any alumni who would be interested in helping out with the curriculum, with putting together a curriculum. Any of that information would be greatly appreciated.
And
Well,
just also, sorry,
Go ahead.
just one other thing to add on to that, just generally, just kind of opening up the question to how you guys could see yourselves getting involved in this, what kind of level of involvement you guys would be up for having. Yeah, we're pretty open for everything.
So I have a question. You mentioned courses like English, first year mandatory English, and then you said something about business and economics. How many courses altogether are you looking at now, is the first question. And then how would it be integrated into those courses? For instance, in the English course of the first year, how would climate be integrated into that?
Yeah, so as for number of classes, we haven't picked a particular class English yet because that's more much more kind of, again, we're going to see what the English department is most convenient for them and where we can see it being able to kind of most quickly get transitioned into. There are about I think 6 or 7 business classes that we've been looking at. So there's an economic sequence. There's a course called Capitalism and Its Critics. There's a few religion classes and ethics classes that are more focused on kind of tech and things like that. However, they don't necessarily go into any environmental ethics of those sort of businesses and tech growth. With the English question, that's something. So there's lower winter. Every English course has to read one book focused around race and have discussions around race. And that kind of term is really dedicated to looking at that through an English lens. And that was something that I found really helpful in my lower term. So we were hoping to do something similar, but make it for English. So still allowing kind of the traditional amount of autonomy that English teachers have in their curriculum, but kind of looking to curate a list of books that the English teachers will have to choose from as being like required. You must pick one of these books from these lists, or 2 of these, or 3 of these, either each one specific term because of the way the teachers switched throughout terms. But that's something we would also love some help on, would be researching a good list of books that are appropriate for an English class where, you know, they're still very much pieces of literature versus something that might be more like not history or science based. But yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, I imagine we could come up with some books to recommend to you.
Yes, yes.
Great. And then insofar as the economics courses, there's a lot to focus on there as well, of course, with climate change. I guess something that I've been learning in my human populations and resource consumption class has been, we were talking about the English economist Thomas Malthus, and he, of course, had a lot of writing on population growth and food production, and he was talking about how imminent natural disasters would be and how they would affect the economy. So something like that would, of course, fit into an economics class. History, obviously, you know, the Industrial Revolution, and every scientist since then that has spoken out against like burning coal, for example. And William, you sent something earlier about your ideas for religion. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I had this idea, if there was like a religion class that looked at spiritual practices of people in the world that have a connection to the earth. Specifically, one that came to mind is I know many Native American tribes have a not so much like a structured religion as some monotheistic religions are, but it's very deeply rooted in the care and
Yep.
the relationship to the earth. And I'm sure and curious that there are other religion practices and spiritual practices out there that have mentions of the earth or something. And I mean, this morning I had a conversation with my friend, and he was saying how we were like, the question came up like, are humans still connected to nature, and like the animal kingdom and all the ecosystems. And he said, like, well, you know, we're so separate from animals, and that we can like, we have this technology, we can like travel to other planets, but you know what we would do as soon as we get to Mars and colonize it, we would try to make it like Earth. So it's like kind of delving into those questions of the human connection to nature and the earth and whether we need it.
When you mentioned something about Native Americans and spirituality, immediately I thought about there's a famous letter written by Chief Seattle to I believe it was to President Polk, or it was in 1855. It's an extraordinary letter. It's just a couple of pages, 2 or 3 pages long. If you just Google, or I can send, I can even paste the link in, and then it's a beautiful statement about a very different way of thinking about humanity's connection with nature.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. If you dig into it, you discover that it actually wasn't written by Chief Seattle, which is very disappointing.
Oh, really?
Nevertheless, that shouldn't take away from the fact that it's a beautifully written letter that would fall directly into what, William, you were talking about. It's
Yeah.
just, it was very distressing to me to discover that it wasn't written by him.
Yeah, Conrad, this is Peter. I'm having problem showing you what I look like, except for my flute.
Yeah.
I would like very much to volunteer to work in both of the domains that William has mentioned, both in the religious culture of the world and how climate, through the idea of conservation of Mother Earth, has been a recurring theme of custodianship in many religions, and also the economics. I taught for many years a course called The Economics of Peace and Happiness. And in that course, both of those themes coalesced. You know, we talked about alternative economic systems. Part of my career, I worked and collected data in 43 countries, so I had lots of examples about alternative economic and obviously resource management systems. And as part of that, there was always this ethical and religious side. So I just like to volunteer to be called upon if in either of these two domains you make progress, you've identified courses, and just want to chat about what elements could be included.
Great idea. Absolutely great idea.
Yeah,
So
wonderful.
William, we have your email address. Do you want things to be sent directly to you? Or
I
should we
would
send
love
things
that.
to the entire group, or you know, how much? That's sort of a general question. How much do you want to receive? How much does everyone in the group want to receive the same stuff, or do you want to, you know, we can just focus on one person and bombard him?
Maybe, I mean, I'm okay with being the main recipient, Safira. I think it's important that one of the co-heads is at least on that email chain too.
Yeah, would you be able to copy Fee, me, and Alicia and Tanya on that
Sure.
email?
I mean, we can just send it to everybody, I guess, and those who aren't interested can
Yeah, I think that's better.
Okay.
you know, ignore it or delete it or whatever. But and, you know, but I just want to be sure that the people who want it get it.
Okay, great. And great. So
Thank you
Mr.
so much, Peter, by the way.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I could send you, William, maybe the syllabus, the last version of the course that I gave, and you could see if there are some themes that sort of jump out at you and spark your interest.
Awesome. Okay.
But the related question is, would there be a professor either in the religion department or in the economics department who is particularly interested in alternative models?
Mm-hmm. Fee, do you know economics? I don't think we've talked about religion that much, but we'll find someone. Someone will be interested.
And I guess
Safira,
a general question: do you think if there were materials like that coming from this alumni group, would it be better to send it first to you and then have you be the people who you know, re-forward it on to a faculty member, or should it come? I mean, we could send something directly to a faculty member too, if that would be helpful, or maybe that wouldn't be helpful. We let you judge what you think would be most useful.
I think probably sending it to us would be that most helpful while we kind of continue to draft it up to like a more formal proposal. And then we'll definitely reach out to you when we start having those meetings with the department heads for like the more official proposals, because I think with those, the more people we can get in those meetings to show the real kind of want for this course, the better, and for these changes in the curriculum. So yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Mhm.
Great.
And I'm wondering almost if it would be better to have a Google document. So maybe you would be able to compile a list of titles and links on that instead of emailing. Maybe that would be a little bit less,
Mhm.
you know,
Sure.
clustered
Right.
for everyone. Yeah, okay, I can make that. And then we'll just keep checking that frequently.
I mean,
Okay, and then,
a single Google Doc that we would add things to. Is that what you're talking about?
yes, that's
Okay,
if that would
great.
work for you.
Sure. And if you want to create it and then share it with us, let us know about it. That'll be fine.
Yes.
Question for William. Have you seen or read Grading Sweetgrass?
yes, I I started it. I haven't read the whole thing, but I got into that book, and my there is a uh, he's a geology professor, and he's also the head of nature at my sleepaway camp, Hemi-Jawasit. It's in Wentworth, and Larry Davis, and he got really into that too, and like they're planning to start like a sweetgrass planting at the camp
Excellent.
so that they can braid it.
Great. Yeah, that's one of the best books. It's a fabulous book, and I would encourage you to read it all. We've talked about outside speakers. I've actually met Robin Wall Kimmerer, and I think she would be an excellent person to think about getting as an outside speaker at some point. She's just a wonderful person.
Yeah, on the notion of outside speakers, that's definitely an area that we could help. And I know there's a problem, getting speakers into your formal assembly schedule. But again, you could go outside that and have speakers come to your club, and then make advertise to the school that this individual is going to come and speak on whatever specific topic it is, and be open for question and dialogue and whatnot. And so, don't be focusing only on trying to get into the official assembly schedule. If we can get some good speakers, you can get them on campus, and you can get hopefully you can get a number of people to hear them and interact.
On that subject, have you thought about this idea of how to bring in people outside of the formal curriculum on the other programming of the school, including speakers and things like Earth? We know Earth Day exists, but I mean, is there a possibility of having more Earth Days or more events? How much latitude, and where do you see the most promising avenues for additional programming that's additional to the curriculum?
Yeah, so Fee mentioned the next year's theme of climate change, which would require us to invite speakers and kind of publicize the club more, and kind of just have more resources available to all students at Exeter on climate change. And so is that what you're kind of
Yes.
talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have considered looking for support for that, for making that more attractive and more, and to find the resources for it, contributing through a fund or some way, but we don't really understand the channels, whether it's a budget you get assigned, or how we can get, if we get those funds, how we could channel them for those purposes.
So, and another question. I understand that's just the proposal now, that the theme for next year be climate issues, right? It's not been formally approved.
Correct. I guess, yeah, going back to my original question, I'm wondering if you all could provide us with some names of trustees, because as I said, I think that you spoke to the trustees.
We have not spoken to trustees yet.
Oh,
but
really?
We understand that Ira Helfand, who's a Nobel Prize winner and a member of the class of '67, so he's a little bit younger than we are, 3 years. He would be, he's a doctor, he's just a medical doctor, but he would be, I think he's the person who's the trustee who's most likely to lead the climate team within the trustees. So, but that's just what we've heard from Principal Rawson, and also, I mean, that nothing is formal yet, as we understand it. But I think that would probably be the one that and I don't know if that's all I can tell you. I don't know anymore, but I think I can share with you a TED talk that he gave in Colorado a few years ago about nuclear war. The reason his organization, Physicians for Social Responsibility, was the winner of a Nobel Peace Prize a few years ago. He's a extraordinary speaker. So I will post the link to that TED Talk in the chat if you want me to, or I can send it as separate in an email. What's better for you?
I think maybe I think the chat would be fine.
Okay, I mean, everyone has to remember to retrieve it, or it'll be gone if you don't save the chat. You can save the chat at the end of a session too. You all know.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Sophia. And then we could save the chat and put it in the Google Doc.
Yeah, if just one of you saves it, then you'll have it to distribute to others. You know how to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, I'm interested. I don't know how to do that. So whenever that's done, I'm interested in getting a copy of the chat.
Okay, well,
Okay.
okay, so maybe it would be easier to send it as an email. Sorry.
Okay, I'll do that now. Yeah, okay.
And also, just so that all of you know, we had a Zoom meeting with Principal Rawson at the end of November. I'm not sure if you all know about that, on the subject of climate change and what we as alumni can do to help support Exeter becoming more involved in this area. And we are intending to continue that conversation with Principal Rawson and see how we can continue to be involved and be supportive in whatever ways we think we can, both with curriculum development, encouraging the development of leadership among students, not only while you are at Exeter, but hopefully so that you can continue on after you graduate from Exeter. And if we can be involved with the trustees, whatever initiatives they're going to have, and so forth. So we are hoping to remain involved in a comprehensive way with Principal Rawson and other groups in the school, as well as students too, of course.
Great.
Another way of saying that is we don't intend to go away. We intend to keep knocking on the door.
Wonderful. And I just sent the doc for compiling all of the curriculum materials that you.
Is that a blank? Is that an empty document now? Or
It is an empty document. I've just listed the
good.
subject name.
Great. We'll take care of it. We'll fill it up.
Also, Joseph, to answer your question on like other departments, we had the idea during our club meeting for math to have like a integrated problem. So like still sticking with the same concepts that they're trying to teach through math, whether that's trigonometry or different things. That's what I'm doing, trigonometry. but then integrate facts and questions that involve the climate change. So personally, an idea was like 350 parts per million is the safe concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And then some question built around that where like, if factories first find out how much carbon is emitted by humans, and then what is the time that we have until it's a hazardous environment, or is it a hazardous environment already?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Do you have a math teacher who is open to that and interested in that already?
So that's one of the people that the Gull project, who's that class that are working on it, that Tanya's a part of. They reached out to Coach and Miss Coogan, who is a math teacher and a part of that entire thing, and is very interested in the environment.
She also runs cross country.
Yeah, that's
what's that? She runs what?
Cross country.
Okay.
You guys might want to know about, for the math part, and I think I sent this around, but we hadn't talked about math, is the information in the Limits to Growth, the book that came out in '72. There's a lot of, let's call it simple math and graphs in there that, yet it's an incredibly important document as part of this process. If you haven't read it, I strongly encourage you to look it up. I sent it out.
Joe sent a PDF of the entire book.
Yeah. But it would interface with, if you need to have a faculty member who's in the math department or engineering or something like that, physics maybe, This would weave into that, the kind of combining what you want, which is learning about math, with a really real world application, which is
Yes.
modeling climate issues. And the only other thing I'd like to throw in right now is I don't know what you guys think about the phrase climate change, but I would encourage us to start thinking about climate disruption as a phrase rather than climate change. The change seems a little, kind of euphemistic.
Like seasons, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's like trying to move the ship, everybody's got this climate change language in their head, but it needs to be edgier or more accurate, actually.
I personally like human caused climate change.
Or,
I think
anthropogenic climate disruption is a mouthful, but that really says it all.
Yeah.
Oh, what was the book that you mentioned just now? Could you
Limits to Growth, which was published in 1972. It was done by a team of students in systems dynamics and their co-teachers who were a husband and wife pair, and they were at MIT. So they used computers to build a model of how the Earth worked, and then ran a bunch of scenarios with changes in different things. And basically, the simple takeaway was that the idea of growth, which was seen as a perpetual goal we should have in society at that point in the early 1970s. All of their scenarios that they ran through their computer system said that we would reach the limits to growth in the first quarter of the 21st century. That's where we are right now.
Well, actually, a little more depressing than that. Every single thing they model that they tried showed a massive population collapse.
Yeah.
Toward the end of the first quarter of this century. The only model they could, after tweaking all the variables, the only one that they could get where the population did not collapse is if the population of the globe held steady at 1974 rates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, of course, the population since 1974 has probably doubled or more than doubled.
Yes.
And this is one of the most seminal works in the field, and it's been read by many hundreds of thousands of people. It was also soundly dismissed by the establishment when it was published, because it didn't say what they wanted to hear, because it said we better stop growing.
And what's sort of interesting was that because it's 50 years old, they did a 50-year follow-up. And they concluded that, gee, those guys who had almost no data and way different computing resources and all kinds of stuff, they were pretty damn close to what we're seeing on the ground today. So it might be valuable for you guys to have it in your tool.
It's a good resource to know about.
I noticed in the paper that you posted, that I was skimming it, that there was mention of an environmental scholarship. I'm curious to know what the thinking was behind that, how that would be used by the students.
Anya, do you want to talk about that? I think that was your idea, right?
Yeah, after that, I was just thinking about making environmental programs more accessible, because summer programs or conferences, and just having that as an option for interested students to be able to apply and have funding for that sort of thing. And also, that would just attract more students to environmentalism, having a scholarship set aside just for environmental pursuits.
So this scholarships fund does not exist today, or it does exist today?
It does not exist today, and
Okay.
we were speaking with Principal Rawson, and he said we could try to find existing funds which are more general and try to set aside some for the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Did we send you the materials on the leadership program you're in the Exeter Summer School?
The HAM leadership program, do you know about that? It's been in the summer school for several years. We're reaching out to them, but I think it's something that they seem to have have done a good job of bringing in some students for here for the summer and helping them learn how to be effective leaders. And I think that would be we're looking into that.
Talking about that in our group, and thinking of sending it to you, but we didn't want to overload you. But I think it's something that you would be very interested in, and particularly if there's some person who is who will be at Exeter next year and sees that and is interested in it and wants to participate and qualifies to participate. I'm not sure, what it requires and everything. Then, we're talking about looking into ways to sponsor that.
Yeah. Yeah, as near as we understand, we think it's primarily in the summer school and maybe exclusively in the summer school, but it still is. It looks like an excellent program.
But if a student in the regular program, the September through May program wanted to apply to the summer school in order to participate in this program for leadership, that certainly would be a possibility.
Yes.
So if any of you are interested or know of anyone who's interested, that might be a possibility. And then you could focus maybe your project on climate change with respect to leadership in climate change.
Yeah, so it's known as the HAM leadership program, HAMM, because the person who got it started was a member of the class of 1955, so 10 years older than us almost. And his last name is Ham. So, but if you want to look into it, it's worth finding out about. And we can send you. There was a story in the Bulletin, the Exeter Bulletin. You know about that quarterly slick glossy magazine about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago maybe. We can send you the link to that article from the Bulletin.
So that brings up the whole subject of senior year and continuity towards the future, because as we mentioned in a previous call, an awful lot of the courses that seemed most appealing in the curriculum were senior year electives.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't get enough people for them, you wouldn't be able to have access to those courses. They wouldn't even be given. But there was also the opportunity of students proposing, and groups of students proposing special projects, almost like tailor-made courses that would address very specific problems to resolve, or areas of study that you find particularly interesting. And we might be able to be helpful in proposing, for those of you where that's an option. I'm not really clear how things look in terms of your clubs, in terms of how many of you are already seniors and on the way out, and how you've planned for your own continuity going forward. So there's really basically two questions I'm asking there. I'm asking about the continuity issue, and I'm asking about the special projects courses.
Yeah, so with the continuity issue, I think we one of the other kind of things that came back from when that GUL project reached out to a lot of teachers was one of the history teachers with Southworth was talking about the idea of having a climate or an environmental diploma, the same way that there is a classical diploma. So once there's kind of that seeded interest in kind of lower level courses about climate change that people who might not able to have otherwise been interested, there's kind of this way to check in and a way to kind of encourage people to come back by having this really specifically tailored way to orient your courses to have the most at the best way possible, and maybe even, I don't know how the classics diploma works and whether or not that allows you to take less classes in other areas in order to make room for more, but that was something that we just kind of got the idea from Ms. Southworth and just kind of got back to us, but so we haven't discussed it as a club at all, but I just saw it just now and I thought it would be a really interesting idea, and instead of trying to create a bunch of new classes, it would be a way to kind of increase retention to those classes. I'm not a senior. We do have a few seniors on this call. I think Nicole and Tanya, you guys might be our only seniors, but what do you guys, how's your experience been with like senior electives and all of that stuff?
Yeah, I don't know about Tanya. I think I kind of talked about this on the last call, but I'm taking like the environmental science sequence. So That's basically, I think with the exception of like literature and the land, those are the only like environmentally focused courses offered to seniors at Exeter. So ecology was my fall term course. And again, I said this on the last call, but it wasn't as much, it wasn't really about like climate disruptions. It was more so about studying the land and um, identifying plants. And now I'm taking human population and resource consumption. Um, and as of the past like 5 weeks I've been taking it, that has been a lot more intertwined with talking about like contemporary um, climate disruption issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third part is chemistry of the environment, which I can't really speak about because I haven't taken it. But I don't know how Tanya or what courses Tanya's taken, but that's been my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been taking a lot more environmental courses now that I'm a senior and have more freedom. So this term is probably my most environmental term because I'm taking Humans in the Environment with Miss Southworth, and that's all about anthropogenic impact on the environment since like the start of humans. And I'm taking GAL, which is the project-based course, the like Green Umbrella Learning Lab is what it
Right.
stands for.
Mhm.
And mine is the group actually pursuing environmental curriculum, and we reached out to the teachers. So yeah, those are two courses I'm taking this term, and I was also trying to do like a senior project. As you mentioned, seniors have the option of having those like small group projects. I really wanted to pursue climate modeling, but I ended up backing off on that since I don't know how to make a deliverable for that. But that's something that I'm learning about independently, and I think seniors also have like a lot more free time to be able to pursue their own interests like that.
So I just
Thank
want to
you.
clarify, do I understand correctly that only Tanya and Nicole are seniors in this group and everybody else is a lower classman? Excellent. We thought more of you were seniors, but
Yeah,
that's
so Fee, Alicia, and who else? I think that's it. Fee, Alicia, and I are uppers, and then everyone else here is a lower.
Wow.
wow, that's good to know. You'll
Yeah,
be
that's-
around for a while.
Yeah, and we have
That's
some of
great.
that in the mix
We'll
too.
get to know you.
Also, just following up on what Tanya said about senior projects, I just proposed mine on Wednesday to the science department. And it's kind of actually what William was talking about with like the religious aspects of environmental science. I'm doing my project on like um, it's kind of exploring like Eastern Asian philosophies on water and Native American spirituality um, pertaining to water and like how that can inspire ocean advocacy. So when Tanya said that, that just reminded me that although I haven't had that much time to do environmental science as much as I'd like, my next term I'll be able to pursue that by virtue of the senior project.
Excellent.
Fascinating.
Awesome.
I also would like to add that there are these 999 courses, which are research study courses, and those are open to any students who have finished all the prerequisites in the certain department. So each department, most departments have the opportunity to create your own course for the term, which is your 999, and it's a research study. I understand that some language departments, you have a lot of flexibility in like creating your own course. And so some people have made specialized course, but you learn it in that language. Or just say biology, that's a research paper. And some people choose different topics. And of course, a lot pertain to the environment. There's also theater and arts, like learning sustainable practices or creating theater inspired by the arts. And that's something that I believe typically uppers and seniors would do, as it takes time to get all your prerequisites and finish your course study.
And who teaches these courses, or do the students themselves sort of put it together?
You need a proposal, and I think you would approach a teacher or be assigned a teacher, but you do have to propose it, I believe, a term in advance, and talk with the teacher about what you're planning on researching and like a plan for the term.
And how many students would be doing a 999 course typically every year? I mean, is it pretty common for everyone to do one, or not very common? How many?
I'm not sure of the number. Fee, do you know?
I'm not sure about the number. Kind of on the question of how many students, the unique thing about a 999 versus a senior project is you can get an entire class together. So if you had a lot of students interested, you could get not an entire like 12-person class, but maybe like 5 or 6 people to do a class, which makes it a bit kind of different. I don't think it's definitely not something everybody does. Like they're less common than senior projects, which still is a fairly small percentage of the senior class that does it, just because there's such a process in proposing, and it's something that doesn't have, I would say, the same structure around it as senior projects. So yeah, I don't know the numbers, but it's not a very frequent thing from the sense I get.
I
So-
took one 999. Sorry, I just think I took one in lower year, and there were 12 people, so it was a pretty large one. And I think the students who proposed the curriculum also determined like a prerequisite, like, oh, you should have taken this course, and then everyone who's taken that course gets an email with the option to be part of the 999.
Mhm.
Great, thank you.
So if we think about you as a group of 10 of you that are here, to what extent is it do you see in the years that you have left the academy, the possibility of doing either 999s or senior projects? Is that something that's in a lot of your minds?
Okay, good.
I would recommend that possibly just for fun, those classes be called 911 classes.
Emergency.
Well, I mean, that's why we're meeting with you guys today. This is not just hey, we got this idea, a bunch of old guys, and you'll notice they're all old guys. Well, actually, it's because women weren't permitted at Exeter when we were there. So anyway, this really is a major issue. And so maybe it should be branded that way.
Yeah. Maybe this is the time. I have a question that I've been eager to ask, and I'm going to throw it out now and see if you all can see how you want to respond to it. And it's that, what do you think, if you're concerned about the climate crisis that we face, what do you think is your biggest challenge or the largest obstacle to being able to realize the vision you think you would like to see, what you'd like to see the world do to start being, to help us have a better future? What do you see as the largest challenge to why is the world not doing the right thing now? Do you think about that at all? It's not a trick question.
It's a very hard one. I don't know
It's
how
a very hard question. There are a lot of challenges, but I happen to, I'd just like to hear what you if you give it any thought. I'd like to hear what you think right now.
Oh, I can just share a little bit about like what I think of it. So I think like being here at Exeter, there's just like an overall lack of action and like thinking about it. Like I know like when I took like physics last year and we were going over at the end of the year, like a little bit about climate systems, people were like really like wow, okay, this is really happening and it's right in front of us. But then afterwards nothing happened. And I think like being at Exeter, we don't like a majority of people here at Exeter are really wealthy, and like being here at Exeter, we're not going to feel like the brunt of the effects of climate change. And I think like just the overall lack of action on campus is probably what's like hurting us, I guess.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I feel like we, as like people overall, moved from being unaware to being ignorant. And I actually like around campus, I hear people just saying like, oh, I reconciled with an idea that our Earth is dying. And I'm like, well, that's not good. Like if you realize that it's happening, it's not just enough to be like, oh, I guess it's occurring right now. So there's just like, as Chris said, like lack of action, and it's really disturbing. I mean, to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can add something to that. Thanks, Sonia and Chris. I think there's often many things to focus on at Exeter, with studies and just like, being and taking care of your health. I think maybe it's a lack of daily time dedicated to healing the earth. I mean, we have like, time for class and time for sports and time for meals. But like, wouldn't it be so cool if we had, I don't know, like 8 a.m. class every single morning is like, we are going to save the earth if you want. And every single day. Like that would do something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope it would, but it might not. That alone might not be enough. One class at Exeter might not result in saving the world. But I'd like to hear what anybody else, if anybody else has anything to add. And then I promise I will tell you what I think is the greatest challenge. And I'm talking about not just at Exeter, but sort of, why are humans not why did we get ourselves into this mess?
I guess on that more kind of international global scale, I mean, I personally think a huge amount of it comes down to money, and just the way that so much of our society has a undying prioritization of short-term wealth over any sort of long-term gain. Also, I know it's 8 o'clock, so to the people who are hopping off, thank you so much for coming. But yeah, just continuing that. One of the effects I think of that I find one of the most disturbing is just the almost brainwashing of climate deniers that's led to that phenomenon, and just how we get to this place where people just flat out will ignore science is sometimes just it hits me sometimes how shocking it is, and the fact that I'm trying, like, we spend a lot of trying to convince people who already know it exists to do something about it, and yet there's like an entire just portion of the world who doesn't even who just are in such denial about its existence that they've decided to pretend it doesn't.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And I feel also that, like, initially I thought that it was just the fact that people think short term rather than long term, like Fee said, and they're just thinking about their short term well being, and not thinking of it, in the words of Greta Thunberg, like their house is on fire, which I think is a great way to put it. And but I also feel like it's the pandemic has been a little depressing, not only because of all the deaths, but also because it has shown that even when something is right in front of people's faces, that they can see people dying, more people dying than many wars that we've had, and they call themselves patriots and America lovers. And they say that they don't want Americans to die, but Americans are, and they're contributing to that. Even when all of that is in front of their very eyes, they still don't do anything. So I don't really know what more, like, an explanation, because I thought that it was the fact that, oh, it's an abstract idea. People, like, even though these things like floods and fires are happening, they don't connect it directly back to climate change. So they just don't see. And I'm like, okay, well, they just need to be educated. But with the pandemic kind of has changed my opinion about that, because I don't understand, like, what goes through people's minds when they see people dying and do nothing. And so that's my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Well said.
Well, from my point of view, the go-to book for the 21st century is Kubler-Ross's On Death and Dying, which maybe some of you know about. It's Kubler-Ross was a cancer doctor in Chicago area in the 70s and dealt with a lot of people who were dying. And they basically have 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I think to answer your question or to reflect on it, lots and lots of people are just in denial. They don't want to face it. And so it's easier to say no.
Mhm.
Well, I think
So-
another question too that's related to that is, given how many people, are in denial, either because they aren't educated or they choose to be in denial, how is it possible to make progress when there's this gigantic weight pulling in the other direction? I think that's also a critical question.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I will share now just a brief, this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I think it relates to what William was talking about with with Native American consciousness and ideas about how we, how they it was a different culture. I think we humans have been, the history of humans, society on Earth is like 200,000 years old. It's been a long time, and his history of civilization is at best 10,000 years. Around the time of the beginning of civilization, which was when we had cities and larger populations and agriculture was developed. The notion that all indigenous societies seem to have in one form or another, and that modern indigenous societies still have. I mean, talking about people who live in the Amazon jungle and they have a sense of being part of nature, of that nature, that their connection with the natural world is something that is inherently alive for them. We humans, civilized humanity, started abandoning that notion along with the beginning of civilization. So we think we're superior to nature, not part of nature. Nature is there for us to manage and control and do what we want with it. And I think until we get to the consciousness that we are part of nature and we need to live in harmony with nature, we won't be able to do what we need to do to, and that's a tall order. I mean, it really is in what I call a mindset, a notion of how you think about, in a very fundamental way, your connection to the world. And so I think that's our biggest challenge, that most people in the world, and I mean literally most people, have the message that they get and the culture that we've grown up in, that all of civilized humanity has been operating on for thousands of years, is that we're not part of nature. We're different from all other life forms. We are different because we have we have the ability to think about things and understand. We have consciousness. We're aware of our life in a way that I don't think a lot of animals even are, higher animals. But we don't think that we have to adhere to understanding the way nature works and working in harmony with nature. So that's starting to bite us in a big way. So
Yeah.
the question is, how do we develop a new? There's a story, there's a narrative about us not being part of nature that we've been living with for thousands and thousands of years. We have to somehow find a new compelling story that people will be attracted to, and that we are part of nature, and there's something that's good about that. So I won't say any more about that, but there's you could spend the rest of your life learning about it. And we have it's not clear how much time we have to get it right, but it's not nearly as much time as we've been getting it wrong. We have to figure out how to get it right pretty soon.
Yeah, I do think that the best answer to that would be, I think, probably green cities. Like, I think that there's been a lot of talking about, cities like Singapore and somewhere Amsterdam, and when cities incorporate ecosystems into their structures, I think that's the best way that humans and nature can coexist, because more people are going to be moving into urbanized areas. metropolitan areas will be growing because of the population increases. So if we can somehow, since we're changing ecosystems and the biosphere already, I think there's been a lot of talk about kind of uniting them in a sustainable way. And yeah, I think that I would support that because it would just make sense, I think, for a lot of people, because cities are these centers of knowledge and human development. And if those are merged with, you know, I guess what many people would consider more primitive and like separated from humanity, then I think people would understand more our relationship with the earth.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really, really good point that you bring up there, comrade, because, you know, I think even if we get through this climate crisis with biodiversity loss, there's something else is always going to come up if we keep treating the planet this way. Even if we're able to cut our emissions with the, you know, deforestation and just literally kind of killing all the very system that keeps us alive, because we think that we don't need it or that we're somehow detached from it. I think you really get on like a really interesting root problem there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sent you the final chapter to Richard Heinberg's book, Power. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it yet, but he doesn't say in what I said in so many words, but that's what he's visualizing a world that might be something that could go on for a while. I think he's a very, and I think you should, you know, I would encourage you to read it and maybe share it. You know, we have to find a way to change our understanding of the world we live in and how we relate to it. So it's not easy, you know. And the big, you know, another real problem is that the world that we have created is a world which more or less requires us to continue operating the way we are to be able to get around. I mean, you know, so we can't start living in harmony with nature until a lot has changed that would allow us to live in an harmonious fashion with nature. Because we, you know, what we have now, you know, we have transportation systems that require, you know, the patterns of how our cities and everything is developed is, you know, doesn't support anything other than what we have. So we have to somehow gradually, you know, start moving in the right direction. And I think Heinberg's book is a good place to start. So I would recommend, so what I sent you is the last chapter, the chapter 7 of that book, which sort of summarizes a lot. But I mean, the whole book is pretty remarkable. So.
Yeah. And also just quickly, as you were talking about books, that did make me think of another thing we could incorporate into our theme is a little like an exhibition in the library around just like really showcasing their climate books and books like that to try to get people to read it. But that's just a smaller scale thing. I'm pretty sure we could organize pretty quickly if we got that going. And maybe we could also talk about bookstores in town doing a like book showcase for those, because there's some really, really good books out there that I've read a few that like they do kind of change your life a bit, just realizing there's just sometimes it just takes one good book to make somebody get really hit by the gravity of the crisis.
Well, I think Braiding Sweetgrass is another example of a book which really illustrates over and over and over in different narratives, that little the chapters, which, and you don't have to read it from beginning to end, it's just, you know, you dip in anywhere. She's constantly talking about an example of a culture, of a way of looking at the world that is living in harmony with nature, not against it. So that's, you know, but again, if, you know, when most of the world works according to the system that we now have, it's hard to do that on your own. But
one thing I'd like to at least mention and certainly contribute, if you guys are interested, is we could, or I certainly would, and I think others would contribute to a book fund that for you guys, and perhaps even books that you would like to hand out or put in the, you know,
showcase them in the library.
Yeah,
or like get 3 copies of this and 4 copies of that and so on, and just start making them available to other students. And you know, anyway, the point I'm getting at is that if you had a need or want for resources that actually cost money as opposed to just links on the internet, please let us know.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you want to just really kind of punch this and say, hey, we're going to buy 20 copies of this and so on. And I don't know, maybe you'd have some way to incentivize people to read them and pass them on.
Well, not just books. I think if you have projects in mind, or if you want to encourage speakers to come or something and need money for expenses, let us know.
Yeah.
I'd like to, since, you know, we're always worried about how fast things move at Exeter and how quickly, you know, we reach vacation. I wonder what opportunities we have from here till June, till May, for speakers. I mean, concretely, if we could just focus on, you know, 2 or 3 that we think would really have an impact, and who they would be, and then what slots, and how we could get it. I think that would be a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think, you know, you might want to think about Earth Day coming up, and you know, in preparation or in advance of Earth Day, having you know, a series of speakers on related topics that would kind of culminate in Earth Day, and then continue after that. In other words, you know, in an integrated sequence of some sort.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the days we actually have coming up is there is a designated day in the school schedule called Climate Action Day, where it's there's typically a speaker, and then it's dependent on the year, but sometimes there are workshops, other times there are kind of people go out and do some sort of community service related to the environment for the day. And that is starting to get planned. Students don't have much like control over the planning of that. That is something predominantly planned out by the sustainability coordinators, so Mr. McTammany and Mr. Biggins. But they have been reaching out about speaker ideas and people that getting to campus in order to speak. One thing that I was also thinking, so Martin Luther King Day is tomorrow, and the school has some really, really powerful programming around that. And it's always a really great, really hits really hard. And it's one of the best times on campus, I think, because on Saturday, so last night, they have this unsilenced performance where people go and speak about, do performances based on issues about racial justice and social justice issues. And it really gets the campus, I think, super united and hyped up ahead of MLK Day. So I was just kind of taking really big inspiration from that, and thinking that the best kind of, that could just taking inspiration and seeing whether or not we could do something similar around Climate Action Day to get a bit more school unity and school preparation leading up to that. Not sure exactly, because I do think outside speakers have the information, but also letting the student body see how kind of passionate other kids are and how important it is to kids just like them might be able to get people more interested.
So Ophelia and William and Severa, if the 3 of you could call up anyone you wanted to in the world to come and speak at Exeter, and knew that that person was going to say, yes, I'll be on a plane tomorrow, do you have any ideas about who you yourselves would like to have come and speak at Exeter?
Yes. Darren Oline, I'm posting his website in the chat. He is so awesome. He's this superfood hunter, and he did a Netflix show with Zac Efron, which got really popular. And I think that's how I found him, even though I watched it because of Zac Efron. And he's like so awesome. He's like vegan, and he's a superfood hunter, and he has this book called Super Life, which is about nutrition and how to live a life that's healthy, fit, and awesome. And like without because like but the important thing is that he is literally like an earth hero, and he has a podcast where he talks about fatal conveniences, which are things in our society that we feel like we need to use that either have a detrimental effect on us or the environment, or both. And he also does longer podcasts where he interviews and has an honest conversation with other people who have ideas they want to get out. And he's like, it would be like my dream if he came and spoke at Exeter.
How many other
How do
Exeter
you spell it?
students?
How do you spell it?
It's
It's
in the chat. It's in the chat. John.
Olien.
Olien.
Yeah.
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat. Yeah, we'll save it. Darren, I mean William, how many other students do you think know of Darren? Is he
the people that I've told about?
Okay. So you're a proselytizer.
I'm his apostle.
How about Greta Thunberg?
That would be pretty insane. I think, like,
Wait,
I think
I don't
that's
know who
something
that is.
across the student body, everybody would be really, really interested in doing.
Well, what
yeah,
if you suggested Greta Thunberg to whoever the faculty are who are working to plan the speakers for, the Earth Day or whatever other, day is going to be devoted to, climate?
Yeah.
So realistically, I'm thinking that to book someone like her or any high profile person like that, we would need to reach out to them now to book them for next year.
Right. I think that's true.
Because right now, Climate Action Day is coming up pretty soon, and I think that the faculty who organize it have everything set already. So we don't have that much influence over that, but everything that we're talking about, from speakers to having the book showcase is definitely realistic. Like, we can start it now, but the book showcase would probably be publicized even more with the kind of general theme of the year, like if we have it throughout the year. So all of those kinds of things, like, we could definitely, I think, do a lot with speakers and more with overall climate change education. Booking them now.
Why not propose Greta Thunberg for next year?
Yeah.
Get it on the radar. Get her on the radar screen. See what her schedule
I have
is.
another. Do any of you know Chloe Maxman?
The name
Yes.
definitely rings a bell, but I can't pinpoint her exactly. Sorry, William, did you say you did?
She's currently a state senator in Maine. She's a graduate of Harvard. She's been 12 years ago. She was a student about your age, I think, and she was. I just saw a video of her talking about what they were doing to be a climate activist. So she's a remarkable organizer, and was. So anyway, and she's in Maine now. She just has announced that she's not going to run for. She's been a state rep, and then she's run races for state office and for representative and then state senator, and defeated people who were well established. She's remarkable. She's actually just announced she's not going to run again because she's going to go back to school, I think. But she's. So she must be, I don't think she's 30 yet. She may be getting close to 30. She would be fabulous. I don't know how available she is.
She was born in 92. She's 29.
She's 29. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Well, anyway,
she would be great because she went to private school. She went through your trajectory and chose to take a political course of action, and is now going back to leaving that to go to law school because she thinks she needs more tools to be more effective.
Yeah.
Brilliant speaker. Actually, both Carl and I have been in touch with her today, so that would be somebody I would highly recommend too. Carl, I don't know if you have a thought on that.
No, I absolutely.
Would you be able to put all of the names that you're mentioning in the doc? I'll send it again.
We will. Yeah, we have it. We'll do that.
Another thing to consider with these speakers is potential maybe doing Zoom, just because thinking about flying somebody out carbon wise is very, very releases a lot of emissions.
It sure
also
does.
with that, it would potentially be able to be more have a wider outreach to the rest of the community. So if I think in the case of the Maine senator, it sounds like she's really local. So I do think having somebody in person does increase engagement within the student body. But I know with for the 50 years of coeducation, Gloria Steinem gave a talk, and that had a huge amount of parent and alum as well watching. So that just might increase viewership and increase more people getting the message. Also, just quickly back jumping to the book thing again. I remember my prep year, we had a required summer reading book. I don't know if that was just a prep thing or if it was just a 1-year school thing, but that could be another thing that we could incorporate as part of this year-long theme, would be
Yes.
having a required book that everybody needed to read over the summer. I don't think that's much of an ask because it's only one book, but yeah.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Right. All good ideas.
Okay, I have another idea. My mom is best friends with this woman named Shannon Howd. She wrote a book called How to Do Good, or actually it's called Good Work, How to Build a Career That Makes a Difference in the, what is it, in the environment, or in a difference in the world. And so it's like a step-by-step like personal process that she outlines for you of how to like change your career path, or not change your career path, but make it more impactful on your area that you want to make, like for especially for sustainability and healing the earth. Like you know, you don't necessarily need to be in a sustainability company. You can be like in business but still have an impact in a positive way.
You want to put something in the chat about her, about the book or whatever, and we'll and where do you think do you know where she lives?
She's very local, New York, I think. And my mom is like, it's like her girlfriend. Like they hang out.
Well, I mean, and just, you know, and Robin Wall Kimmerer of Braiding Sweetgrass, she's in upstate New York, so she's not. She's in New England, so
she would be great.
Yeah,
important to get these names in early because, as we say, you know, it's highly possible that, from what we understand, the trustees and the school will announce a whole climate disruption initiative, and they're going to have all kinds of ideas of what they want to do. So if we can get the ideas we have in ahead as early as possible, it will be important.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we still have to put together a proposal for the for the environmentalism theme for next year, and we'll try to do that, of course, as soon as possible.
Is there any way we could help you with that? I mean, or you want to send your ideas, let us see what you're thinking about, and we could create, whatever. If there's a way that we can contribute to what you propose,
yeah.
Well, I think we've already agreed on a whole bunch of them. You know, the list of books, the list of speakers.
Yes. We'll write a draft and then we'll send it to you, and then you can add whatever you like and make comments on the document, and we'll finalize it and then send it out.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the local curmudgeon, but everything.
Not so local.
Yeah, not so local curmudgeon. I just want to point out that everything that we've been talking about, curriculum development and connecting with other schools and speakers and so on, has to do with what I would basically use the word talk. It's like education, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's going to have to be a critical component of this educational process that goes to walk, that people have to walk this talk. They can't just say, oh yeah, gee, I learned something. There have to be passionately, or I mean, considering how much has to change in as short of time as possible. And, you know, I think most of you people may already know that most atmospheric scientists, glaciologists, oceanographers, and so on, pretty much walked from mitigation. There's only two routes, mitigation and adaptation. And I think mitigation is like over. So then the question is, what is the walk that has to happen to make adaptation effective? And of course, really, part of the reason I think I got excited about this topic, which I've been engaged in for 50 years, was that we've heard for decades, you know, from James Hansen and Al Gore and oh my God, any number of movies and books and links and blah, 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 lectures and so on. We've heard what needs to happen, but nobody's really buying the story because I think it's really difficult. And so we have to find ways of indicating to people what they can do. And from my point of view, because you guys are an elitist, I mean, it is, educational institution, it's the top 1% that really needs to be changed in this world.
Mhm.
You could change the top 1% and be somehow effective. Then you'd maybe want to have your next goal, the top 5%. And then if you could get there, you want to get the top 10%. If I think my guess is that if we got the top 10% of the politicians or the people with money or people with influence to have a come to Jesus moment, a big one, the other 90% would go along.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that, oh, sorry.
No.
Sorry.
So I'm just adding that to your workload.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the walk the walk portion of all of this is through education. Really, it's more, our goal is mobilization. So it's people who, because we've mentioned that whenever climate changes or climate disruption is brought up in a class, everyone is always shocked, and everyone feels the gravity of the situation, and everyone understands that something must be done. But then, it's time for calculus, or it's time to write an English paper, and then it goes to the back of your mind. But if we keep bringing it up in people's minds and they're just confronted over and over by this information, we trust that, students like those at Exeter would choose to do something, especially people who want to go into economics or business, or they want to be a writer or journalist or something like this. If they're forced isn't the right word, but if these classes are mandatory for them to take and they're being inundated by all this information, then I think that something will be done.
There's a better chance if the more we can do, the more things can happen. Yeah.
Mhm.
I kind of have a general question that I don't really have an answer to. How do you guys think we can balance making sure people get the information and are inundated with the information and that's repeating theme to represent the importance, but also making sure that it isn't like almost normalized or desensitized? Because I think sometimes when you're getting a level of information, it sometimes almost loses its impact. Like one of the words I was thinking of is how many politicians have said the word that climate crisis is an existential threat. And then I really thought about what that meant the other day, and it was like, I think that gravity gets lost every time. So do you guys have any ideas how to balance that?
Well, I think we have to have plenty of examples and stories and talk about things that are happening, not just talk. So the more there can be examples of things that make a difference, that people can do, that help change minds and do, that's better than just saying we have a crisis. I mean,
I think it's a dilemma. I mean, I do agree with Safira that repetition does help because it keeps this on the radar screen. But I think also, Ophelia, you bring up a good point too, that when you hear something, when any of us hear something about anything over and over and over again, after a while we kind of like say, oh yeah, I heard that before. So it's difficult to find the balance. But I think repeating it more frequently rather than less is probably a good thing, because it's just so difficult to get through. I mean, if you think of your own day, the barrage of emails and other distractions that present themselves to you, it's so hard to keep a focus. And you all are in school. We're not even in school any longer. I mean, I have to remember to brush my teeth. I mean, really, it's hard to just keep focused on what you have to do.
Well, when events happen, in the here and now, like when the streets of Portland, Oregon are melting because of a heat dome, And people, you know, hundreds of people are dying from heat exhaustion in Portland when you have these massive fires in California, and then, you know, just wait, you know, another couple of days and there's massive fires in Colorado, and you have the floods in Germany and in Kentucky. You know, you sensationalizing is not bad, because you're talking about sense, what you are actually experiencing with your senses. This is real. This is happening. So I think you have to do a certain amount of sensationalizing when events like this are impacting, because this is more and more what the world is going to look like. You know, the folks you're talking to here, not too many of us are expecting to be around in 2050, you know? And in 2050, you are going to be around, and, you know, you probably don't want to think about yourself in the 40s or something, but that's, you know, really prime of life. You're going to be launched, you know, in your life, in your life's work, your career. You're going to have young families, and you are going to have one mess of a world to deal with. That's the message, you know, you got to get to other people, that they might want to be, you know, lawyers or stock investors or, you know, doctors or whatever. It's just, you know, all that is going to be very, very difficult to actually actuate with the environment that you're going to have. So this is why we're doing, you know, what we're doing right now.
I mean, another way of looking at this is that we're going to, you know, you're talking about, you know, things have to change. We have to, we're trying to change people, but it's also important to understand that the world is going to change, and it's going to change our lives, change the lives of everyone who's alive and trying to just get through a day dramatically in a short period of time. So it's not, you know, I mean, rather than choosing to change, we're going to be forced to change some things that we can't even imagine right now. And that's, I mean, that's unpleasant to think about.
But one of the keys to what Ophelia is bringing up is, okay, and what Joe said is, okay, you have the talk, okay, so how do your students, so how do you get to actually walk? Well, there are a whole bunch of very good initiatives going on in the world, and Conrad has pointed out, and he actually took to the Academy together with Joe, that movie Tomorrow, that I think that represents how many of those projects are there going on in the world right now that are based on that idea of
hundreds, thousands, you know,
right?
it depends on what you count, but yeah, there are all kinds of little initiatives. This is the transition. Do you all know the movie Tomorrow, the documentary? You know, so that I'm going to talk to Andrew about that. I have, you know, it's a wonderful. It was made by a French team in 2012 and 13, I think, and first released as a. But you know, it's just as relevant today as it was when it was done, as it was when it was released. It's a wonderful film, very, 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 very uplifting. But it basically, the message is, everything has to change.
Is this on Netflix or Amazon Prime?
No, I think the way you can get it is it's available through iTunes for rental or purchase, and I think the rental price is like $2 less than the purchase price or something. So you can just buy it and then have it, you know. And I have it that way, and I also happen to have a DVD of it that I showed at Exeter.
It's important to get that link. Link out.
I can give you the link to the you know, the iTunes store, which has the movie. It's a you know, and I think you can buy it for less than $10. Just, you know, and show it all, you know, show it for the rest of your life to many people. It's a great film. It's very uplifting.
Like, I think Safira's idea of mobilization is right on. It's even more powerful if that mobilization is based on real life action, things where you are actually doing things and getting things done and connecting with people that are doing things, and you can show that. That's really powerful. That's really powerful. So senior projects, or maybe summer projects, anything where you can mobilize and somehow participate is
Right.
that's really keeps it fresh and keeps it very believable.
In the state of Maine, there's a bill that's about to be passed, I think, which will be funded with $3 million. And the idea is to educate elementary teachers to be able to teach climate change, but not just elementary,
Yes. Oh my
like
God.
public school teachers.
Yeah.
So any way Exeter kids could get involved in a program like that, I think would be terrific.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, and including the things that are happening at the academy. If you see the video, that the Chloe Maxman video, the initiatives she proposed, they seem like just extremely simple initiatives, but they're very
Right.
powerful.
That's right.
Very, very, very powerful. I mean, it sounds so simple. I mean, she doesn't use any fancy language. She doesn't use any highbrow stuff, no holier than thou stuff. It's all really practical, resolving. And one of the cases that most impressed me was, the use of plastic bags. What a huge impact they can have by just practically eliminating plastic bags with a whole program of getting that done and making
reusable bags.
So, I mean, that sort of thing where you can get, can show it happening in the academy, not only through what the administration does, but through things that the students do. Boy, that's powerful, because you're grassroots organizing where you are right now. You're putting those things into practice. That is powerful.
Yeah, that's one of the kind of restructurings that I was kind of hinting at the beginning that we're trying to do, because I think, but there's so much impact that those kind of smaller, simpler initiatives can have. But at the same time, there's like other kind of more long-term things we've got to be working on with the administration, and we were struggling to be able to balance those all, because the way clubs are typically set up have been entirely kind of co-heads do the brunt of the work, and then club members kind of come and just brainstorm. So we've started doing some like smaller initiative, handing them over to team leaders within the club. So Sonia, who was on the call earlier, she had this initiative about reducing junk mail, and she's already gone and kind of with that smaller subgroup, gone and met with the sustainability committee in the town of Exeter, and hearing her proposal, and made a huge amount of ground with that. So we've got a few of those sorts of initiatives running. There's one about Cora balls. So I don't know if you guys know about that, but with the microfibers that are leached from synthetic clothing in every wash, we're going to try to get these balls which absorb all of those in the laundry for as many laundry machines as possible in Exeter. And smaller initiatives like that we're also trying to do, and just give lower classmen that kind of ability to take leadership and have passion from a younger.
That's great. I'm going to steal another one of Conrad's ideas that's explained very well in that Tomorrow film, which is this whole idea of permaculture.
Yeah.
And which takes a long time to establish. Apparently at Exeter we have something we could call a school farm.
Do you know about that?
Yeah, there's a garden.
Yeah.
There's a garden by the soccer fields, but like I've not like witnessed any community involvement in that.
Yeah, well, we are doing this dining hall initiative that is that has to do with hydroponics. Yeah, so William, do you want to talk about that? William is participating in it with Chris and I forgot.
Kosi, I think the other person.
Yeah, Chris and Kosi are leading that initiative, and Will is participating. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So we're looking to set up a hydroponic system, which is when there's no soil, but it's a garden.
Yeah.
So it's plants in a tubing with nutrient fluid going through.
Yep.
And the goal is to have produce that we can provide for the dining halls. So that way it's more local and more fresh, because it has more nutrients if you take it directly from the plant instead of importing it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Is there a greenhouse for that?
Huh?
Do you have a greenhouse for that?
We want to do it in the dining hall, but we don't have a greenhouse. No, and that's what I've been thinking about. Like, they need sunlight, so
yeah.
we don't have
your first reaction when you hear about growing food is you're at school mostly in the winter, and it's hard to produce things in the winter. But of course, if you do use greenhouses and a whole technology that's already quite well known, and that we know people that have done it, and then we can connect with you, you could start doing all the things. And Conrad is an expert on this. He could connect you very quickly to the people who would start a process that would take years, and that would, in say 5 or 6 years from now, would get you to a point where you'd have a very, very significant, important source of food production right there at Exeter.
Now, this is another example where the state of Maine can be inspirational. There's a guy named Elliot Coleman who's has an establishment on Cape Rosier. And I think, Carl, you know where Cape Rosier is, up in Maine.
Yeah, we have a classmate that lives there.
Yeah, so it's pretty far up. He has developed. I won't go into all the details. He's now focusing exclusively on hoop houses that are, plastic covered things, rounded thing, hoop houses that he can sort of move back and forth across where gardens are growing. And within a hoop house, he can put then a lower, just a second tier of plastic covering over plants where they're growing. So the hoop house is big enough for people to walk in. And he maintains that on Cape Rosier in the middle of winter, which is much colder than where we are, than even where Exeter is, he can have a Florida or Georgia climate in that growing environment, in the double layered, so you could do something where you can grow food literally year round in any climate you can imagine. And I'm sure that I've been there, I've talked to him, that if Exeter wanted to develop that kind of thing as part of their permaculture, gardening, I'm sure that he would be a resource that we could draw on. So that's just, there are lots of possibilities.
Yeah, so something else that we were trying to do at the beginning of the year, but our focus shifted, was doing things like that, where we would have experts come and actually help us implement initiatives that we wanted to do. I reached out to Kate Orff, who was featured in a New Yorker article. She works in New York City, doing this kind of sustainable architecture. And recently, the article was about, I think, she was making these natural barriers for sea level rise made out of these piles of oysters.
Right.
So it was making these this natural ecosystem there. So I emailed her asking if she wanted to come, but we haven't received a response, and then we got caught up with all these other initiatives and bigger projects, but that's definitely something that we'd still like to do.
Yeah. I'd like you to share that. And I would also like to point out that one of the advantages, we're doing this because the graduates that you have here, the old alums, we went to Exeter, so that's our connection. You're there too. One of the advantages of being at Exeter is that even if somebody who is busy and has, is maybe hard to get, if there's a chance for someone to come to Exeter, you might be able to get people that other places couldn't get, just because Exeter is kind of a special place. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
I just point out, we are now, it's almost 10 minutes before 9. I have a feeling we could go till midnight, because there's a lot of energy here, but we can do this again. And I think with sharing information before we get together again is probably a good idea. But if you have some closing remarks, or we can just go around, we should probably aim at wrapping this up close to 9 o'clock.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I could talk with you guys forever, but I have on Tuesday, so I should probably study. But
well, you probably have a lot more energy than I do, Ophelia. I can't talk forever. I can't.
But I guess one thing, to quickly summarize, it was, there were some really great ideas, I think, out there. With the curriculum next steps, we're going to reach out to those teachers by the end of the week. we were just kind of waiting to hear back from the Gull initiative sending their things out. But after that, if you guys could help with any, we'll set up that doc. So researching any sort of English book ideas. Peter, if you could put in that sort of information that you're talking about in that doc around the economics and around the religion element that William was talking about, as well as just beginning to brainstorm kind of ideas. If you could just, one thing I'd like to highlight is about the name of the trustee that you think we could reach out to, just because that's a really important first step for us. But I think, yeah, okay.
Right? Was it?
Ira is his first name is Ira, IRA, and his last name is Helfand, HELFAND. And if you Google,
He's class of 1967.
Class of 67, you know, but if you Google his name and then TED Talk, you can find this talk that he gave in Colorado a few years ago. You see what, you know, how he presents himself. He's a very impressive person.
That's awesome. But
One
yeah, I would love to make sure we set up another meeting, maybe within, I don't know how much you guys are available, but a month.
Not tomorrow night.
No, but a month or two or something like that, just so that we have a kind of a date to want to be able to get.
Well, that reminds me. Last night when we weren't really meeting, but we did hear from, I forget which, somebody suggested you normally, the whole environment action committee, or whatever we call ourselves, meet regularly once a week at 7 o'clock, we heard. And there are some more people. I mean, if you would like to have a meeting where it wasn't, weren't all in your individual spaces, but you meet together where you're all in one room and you could all sort of participate. If you'd want to do something like that, we could do that too. Because 7 o'clock is the time. 7 o'clock is one of the few times that Joe Simons, who's on the West Coast, and Joe Duane, who's in Bangkok, can get here, because, you know, it's tomorrow morning for Joe Duane already. But
yeah. So do you mean, I apologize. Do you mean we would have you on Zoom and then everyone else would be meeting?
If you wanted to do something like that, yeah, I mean, you could just set up one computer and, you know, whatever. If you wanted to do that, that's, if maybe that would be advantageous to you, maybe it's not. Maybe it would be too confusing and it would take up what you want to do with your regular meeting. But if, you know, we're open to whatever you think would be useful, we will consider, as long as it's not too crazy.
I'd like to throw in a couple of ideas. One is in terms of curriculum development. I don't know, I don't think the English department's got this. I don't know there's history, but you really need a storyteller, and maybe even a media presence of some kind. I mean, everybody's moving to TikTok and Instagram and TikTok, excuse me, and I have nothing to do, and over my dead body will probably never have anything to do with any social media, because I think it's absolutely destructive. It may have a 1% value and a 99% disaster. But anyway, I think storytelling is going to be critical here. Maybe that's in the philosophy department or some mixture. And in fact, as I personally would get rid of all disciplines, because I think they're going in the wrong direction academically. Now, that said, the other thing, really, really big picture, is I think a lot of people, part of this denial issue is, well, if we do have to change, we can just substitute. We can get off fossil fuels and we can just use solar and wind and nuclear and tidal or whatever and party on. And I think that is a complete prescription for disaster.
Yes.
You know, even an Exeter grad who made a lot of press back in the 70s, Stuart Brand, who did the Whole Earth Catalog. He wrote a book where he said, and he's studying all the big issues of going to the future and how we're going to presumably manage. And his 4 recommendations were, not necessarily in order, cities, urbanization, GMO foods, geoengineering, and nuclear power. And this is an Exeter grad. So the idea that we can sort of have our cake and eat it too, we can have this incredible lifestyle and export this concept of our lifestyle to everybody on the planet who wants to be like us, and still be able to live within the limits of the planet is just simply insane. But it's not a message that anybody wants to hear. I think the real big picture item is we are going to downsize. And the only question is, are we going to choose to downsize thoughtfully, or is the planet basically going to downsize us? You know, if COVID goes the route, I mean, I'm not saying it will, and I'm sure it won't, but you know, if Ebola went airborne, that would be a major downsize, but it wouldn't be a pleasant one. So I think it's really important for us to realize that for your future, we got to think small, think smaller, think less. It looks like many of you students possibly could be international students. I'm not sure. But in any case, would you fly home for Christmas, or would you fly home for the summer or something? In other words, at what point do we actually have to walk the talk and cut down our transportation use, our refrigeration use, our AC use, everything? That's
yeah.
Can I jump in just for 1 sec?
Yeah.
Sure. Last fall or last year, there was a major project in Maine called the Maine Food Convergence Project. And it was really focusing on food systems and how the food system particularly in Maine works, doesn't work, its resilience, its abilities, et cetera. Anyway, it intersected with the Maine Climate Action Now in a major way. It was hugely influenced by the leadership of the Convergence Project being Wabanaki. And so it had a tremendous indigenous people's presence throughout the whole project. And one of the major leaders of it is also somebody who teaches permaculture. Anyway, all of those things sort of just mashed up in my brain, and I'm not sure, but I think that maybe putting together some of those elements and getting them into this document, into the chat, that you folks could draw on. It's a real mixture of some real activists. Their main focus initially was food. It has now shifted over to food and climate. And the people involved in it, it was not just Elliot Coleman up on Cape Rozier, but I went to the farmers market here in Brunswick, Maine. There are 4 active farmers markets throughout the year working with hoop houses and growing their own food. It's happening. And all those people are very accessible. They were involved in the Convergence. It brings together a lot of indigenous thinking and hands-on permaculture. And I'm sure there could be some really interesting linkages there.
Great. Well, we're 1 minute before 9 o'clock now, so we probably should just, have to bite the bullet and say goodbye. This is a time for anybody who wants to save the chat to do it, because if you and we can, I will save it before we turn things off, and I'll do it right now.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we'll talk soon about we'll figure out when to gather again. I mean, we can certainly do something within a month or whenever, whatever you think about what works for you and how we should approach it, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so
I want
much.
to say how much I appreciate all your contributions. I
Yes.
found it extraordinarily interesting and impressive. Just amazing. I'm just, you made my day.
Yeah, and I'm very pleased to learn that Ophelia and Sophia are not seniors. I thought you were all seniors when we were gone. No, it's great.
And William too is not a senior.
And William's only lower, so I mean it's great.
Right.
So yeah, so that's good. That's excellent. So
Thank you
onward,
guys so much.
onward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Great night.